Hi, I'm Sophie Chen, and I'm about to tell you a story that changed everything I thought I knew about family, success, and my own worth. If you've ever felt like you weren't enough in your family's eyes, or if you've ever been told your dreams were too small, stay with me. I promise by the end of this, you'll understand why the people who doubted me the most are now the ones asking for a second chance. And if this story resonates with you, hit that subscribe button because there are more stories like this coming your way. It was my father's 60th birthday dinner at Bistro Laurent, one of those upscale French restaurants in downtown San Francisco where the waiters wear bow ties and the wine list costs more than my monthly rent. I was running late from work, still wearing my management uniform, black slacks, white button-down, and a navy blazer with our restaurant's logo embroidered on the pocket. The pin on my lapel that read, Cornell Hotel Management, Alumni 2019, was partially hidden by my scarf, but I didn't think anyone would notice it anyway. They never did. The reservation was under my father's name, Michael Chen, and as I walked through the dining room, I could see my family already seated at a large table near the window. My mother, Patricia, was laughing at something my sister Madison had said, her hand resting affectionately on Madison's arm. My father sat at the head of the table, looking distinguished in his tailored suit, every bit the successful attorney he'd spent 35 years becoming. I was carrying a small gift bag, a vintage law book I'd found at a bookstore in Portland, when I heard my father's voice coming from the private room adjacent to the main dining area. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see him standing with Madison, their backs to me. Madison deserves every penny of that $500,000 for Harvard Law, my father was saying, his voice filled with pride. She's earned it. She's going to make a real difference in this world. I froze, my hand on the door handle. Madison laughed, that light, carefree laugh I'd heard my whole life. "What about Sophie?" she asked, but there was something cruel in her tone, like she already knew the answer. My father sighed. "Sophie? She's only good enough for a diner job. That's just reality, Madison. Not everyone is cut out for greatness. Your sister chose hospitality because it's easy, because it doesn't require the kind of intellectual rigor that law does. She's a hard worker, I'll give her that, but there's a difference between working hard and having real potential." "At least she's doing what she's good at," Madison added, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "Bringing food to people, serving. That's her calling, right?" They both laughed. I stood there in the doorway, invisible as I'd always been, holding a tray of appetizers one of the servers had asked me to carry in, since I worked in restaurants anyway. My hands trembled. The carefully wrapped gift in my bag suddenly felt like the most pathetic thing in the world. No one saw me standing there. No one ever did. Growing up as Sophie Chen meant growing up in the shadow of perfection. Madison was 2 years older, 2 inches taller, and about 2 million times more important in my parents' eyes. It wasn't always obvious. They never screamed at me or called me names. The cruelty was quieter, more insidious. It was in the way my father's face lit up when Madison walked into a room, and how it remained neutral when I did. It was in the way my mother displayed Madison's academic awards on the mantel, but put my culinary competition ribbons in a drawer. When I was 10 years old, I cooked my first full meal for the family. I'd spent hours planning it, watching cooking shows, practicing knife skills on vegetables I'd bought with my allowance. I made pan-seared chicken with lemon butter sauce, roasted vegetables, and homemade mashed potatoes. I set the table with our nice dishes, folded the napkins the way I'd seen in a magazine, and waited nervously for everyone to sit down. Madison had gotten a 98 on her math test that day. That's what dinner was about. Her achievement, her brilliance, her future as a mathematician or scientist or whatever she decided to become. My food was eaten without comment. When I asked if they liked it, my mother patted my hand and said, "It's fine, honey." My father was too busy asking Madison about the 2 points she'd missed and how she could get a perfect score next time. I cleared the dishes alone that night, fighting back tears over the sink. That was the first time I realized that what I created with my hands would never matter as much as what Madison achieved with her brain. By the time I was 14, I'd stopped expecting them to notice. I won first place in the San Francisco Youth Culinary Competition, beating out 60 other students with my deconstructed chicken pot pie and lavender creme brulee. The prize was a $500 scholarship and a feature in the local newspaper. I was so excited I could barely contain myself during the awards ceremony. My father wasn't there. He was at Madison's mock trial competition in Sacramento, watching her pretend to be a lawyer. My mother came to the culinary competition, but left early because she had papers to grade. When I got home that night, holding my trophy and blue ribbon, Madison was at the kitchen table doing homework. "How was your cooking thing?" she asked without looking up. "I won," I said quietly. "That's cool." She turned a page in her textbook. "Mom and Dad said I got into the advanced placement program at school. They're taking me to dinner tomorrow to celebrate." I put my trophy on the counter and went upstairs. It stayed on that counter for 3 days before I moved it to my bedroom myself. The defining moment came when I was 17, a senior in high school, holding an acceptance letter from Cornell University's School of Hotel Administration. Cornell, an Ivy League school, consistently ranked #1 in the world for hospitality management. I'd worked so hard for this. Perfect grades in all my business and culinary classes, hundreds of hours volunteering at soup kitchens and catering events, letters of recommendation from chefs and restaurant owners who believed in me. I ran downstairs waving the letter, ready to finally make my parents proud. My father was on the phone with Madison, who was finishing her sophomore year at Stanford. He held up one finger to silence me. Wait, while he finished asking her about her internship applications. When he hung up, I showed him the letter, barely able to speak through my excitement. Cornell accepted me. Full academic scholarship plus a spot in their honors program. Dad, this is huge. Cornell's program is... "Why didn't you apply to law school?" he interrupted. I blinked. "What?" "You have good grades, Sophie. You could get into a decent law school, follow a real career path. Madison's at Stanford planning to apply to Harvard Law. Why are you settling for hospitality management?" "It's not settling," I said, my voice shaking. "It's what I want to do. Cornell is... It's a hotel school," he said dismissively. "You're going to learn how to manage maids and breakfast buffets. That's not a profession, Sophie. That's a service job with a fancy degree." My mother tried to soften it. "What your father means is that we want you to consider all your options. You're smart enough for more than this." But I wasn't smart enough. Not like Madison. That was the unspoken truth. I went to Cornell anyway, but the celebration I'd imagined never happened. There was no party, no proud announcements to family friends, no photo sessions in my acceptance sweatshirt. Madison's Stanford acceptance 2 years earlier had been commemorated with a dinner party for 40 people, professionally printed announcements, and a week of Facebook posts about my father's brilliant daughter. My Cornell acceptance got a "That's nice, honey," and a reminder to apply for financial aid because hospitality degrees were expensive and the return on investment was questionable. On graduation day from Cornell 4 years later, I walked across that stage summa cum laude, wearing cords for academic excellence and holding certificates for outstanding achievement in financial management and food service operations. I'd graduated in the top 3% of my class from one of the most competitive hospitality programs in the world. My parents arrived 2 hours late. They'd driven Madison to a job interview in Boston that morning, a paralegal position at a prestigious law firm, and hit traffic on the way back. By the time they found their seats, I was already holding my diploma, standing alone on the plaza while other graduates took photos with their families. I asked a stranger to take my picture. She was kind about it, sensing something was wrong, and told me I should be proud. I thanked her and walked away before she could see me cry. There were no photos of my family at my graduation. Madison got her Harvard Law acceptance letter that same week, and suddenly my achievement was footnoted to hers. Both our daughters graduating this year, my mother told people at parties. Madison's going to Harvard Law in the fall. Sophie finished her hospitality degree and got a job in San Francisco. The differences in how they treated us weren't just emotional. They were financial, practical, and devastating. Madison's education at Stanford cost $320,000 over 4 years. My parents paid for all of it. They bought her a 2-bedroom apartment in Palo Alto so she wouldn't have to deal with dorm distractions. They gave her a brand new Audi A4 for her 21st birthday because image matters in professional fields. They funded her spring break trips to Europe, her summer internships that required living stipends, her wardrobe for networking events. I got $40,000 toward Cornell, about a quarter of the tuition, and was told the rest was my responsibility. I lived in the smallest, cheapest dorm room available. I worked 3 part-time jobs, morning shifts at a campus cafe, evening catering for university events, and weekend consulting for a local restaurant that needed help with their menu design. I drove a 2005 Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door that I'd bought for $3,000 from a graduating senior. I graduated with $30,000 in student loans. Madison graduated with 0 debt and a trust fund. But the worst part wasn't the money, it was the message behind it. Madison was worth the investment. I wasn't. When I was 22, I got an internship at the Ritz-Carlton San Francisco, one of 5 spots offered nationwide to recent graduates. It was incredibly competitive, over 300 applications for those 5 positions. The internship paid well and came with the possibility of a management position afterward. I was over the moon. I called my father to tell him. "That's nice," he said. "Madison just started at her law firm. They're putting her on a major corporate case already. She's going to be a partner track within 5 years." I mentioned my internship at a family dinner a month later. My father looked at me with something close to pity. "Hospitality is just a service industry, Sophie. You're going to spend your life serving other people, making them comfortable. Madison's going to shape policy, influence law, make real changes. Don't you want to do something that matters?" "Hospitality matters," I said quietly. "To tourists," he replied, and turned to ask Madison about her casework. By the time I was 24, I'd been promoted to assistant manager at one of San Francisco's top boutique hotels. I'd implemented new training programs that increased guest satisfaction scores by 30%. I'd redesigned the check-in process to reduce wait times by half. I was making a difference in my field, learning rapidly, and building a reputation as someone who understood both the operational and human sides of hospitality. No one in my family remembered to congratulate me on the promotion. Madison had just gotten a raise at her law firm, and that was the focus of every phone call, every holiday gathering. When I was 26, I wrote a business plan for my own restaurant. I'd been working on it for months. Market research, financial projections, supplier relationships, menu concepts. It was a farm-to-table concept focused on sustainability and community partnerships, located in Portland, Oregon, where the food scene was exploding and the cost of entry was lower than San Francisco. I needed investors. I needed belief. I needed someone in my family to just once say, "We believe in you." Instead, that same year, my father wrote a $500,000 check to Harvard Law School for Madison's tuition. I found out about it by accident. My mother mentioned it casually on a phone call, as if it were nothing. "Your father is so proud. Madison got into Harvard Law, you know. We're making sure she can focus entirely on her studies without worrying about finances." $500,000? I repeated, stunned. "It's an investment in her future," my mother said. "You understand, don't you? Law school is expensive, but she'll make it back tenfold. She's going to be a partner at a major firm someday." "What about my business plan?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. "Did Dad look at it? I only need $50,000 to get started, and I could pay it back within 3 years based on my projections." There was a long pause. Sophie, restaurants fail 60% of the time in the first year. Your father doesn't want to see you throw money away on a risky venture. Madison's path is secure. Surely you can see the difference. I could see the difference. The difference was that Madison was worth investing in and I wasn't. That night, I made a decision. I was done trying to earn their approval. I was done shrinking myself to fit their narrow definition of success. I was done sharing my achievements only to have them dismissed or compared unfavorably to Madison's. I applied for jobs in Portland, 635 miles from San Francisco, and accepted a position as general manager at a small but well-regarded bistro. I packed my life into my dented Honda Civic, drove north, and didn't look back. My mother cried when I told her I was moving. Portland? Why so far? What about family dinners? I need to build my own life, I told her. Somewhere I can breathe. My father's response was more direct. Running away won't make you more successful, Sophie. You'll still be managing someone else's restaurant. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll be doing it on my own terms. Portland welcomed me in ways San Francisco never had. I rented a tiny studio apartment, 350 square feet for $1,200 a month, which seemed like a fortune, but was a third of what I'd paid in San Francisco. The apartment had one window that looked out onto a brick wall, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a bathroom where the shower was literally next to the toilet. But it was mine. The bistro where I worked, a French-American place called Margot's, was struggling. The owner, Catherine, was a brilliant chef, but a terrible businesswoman. The restaurant had incredible food but inconsistent service, chaotic operations, and a reputation for being unreliable. Reservations were often overbooked or lost, staff turnover was high, and the finances were a mess. I knew within a week that I could turn it around. Catherine had hired me as general manager, but what she really needed was a total operational overhaul. I started small. I implemented a new reservation system that synced with our table management software. I created a training program for servers that emphasized hospitality over just taking orders. I analyzed our food costs and found we were losing thousands of dollars a month to waste and inefficient inventory management. Within 6 months, Margot's went from barely breaking even to showing a healthy profit. Guest satisfaction scores went from 3.2 stars to 4.7. We started getting write-ups in Portland Monthly and Willamette Week. Catherine was thrilled. She gave me a raise, a bonus, and the authority to make whatever changes I thought necessary. "You saved this place," she told me. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I was making $62,000 a year, plus bonuses. It was enough to live on, save a little, and start planning for my own restaurant someday. I picked up side work as a food consultant for startup restaurants, helping them with menu design, operational systems, and financial planning. It paid another $15,000 to $20,000 a year and gave me experience across different types of establishments. I was building something, quietly, carefully, without fanfare. I didn't tell my family about any of it. When they called, I gave vague answers. Work is fine. Yeah, still managing the restaurant. Portland's great. I stopped trying to share my wins because I knew what would happen. They'd minimize them, compare them to Madison's latest achievement, or worse, not respond at all. My parents assumed I was still the struggling daughter who'd chosen the easy path. They had no idea I was saving $1,000 a month, building a portfolio of consulting clients, and earning a reputation in Portland's tight-knit food community as someone who could transform struggling restaurants. It was easier this way, less painful. I learned to find validation in my work, in my clients' success, in the communities I was building. Their approval didn't matter anymore, or at least that's what I told myself late at night in my tiny apartment when the loneliness felt overwhelming. Everything changed when I met James Morrison. It was at a food and hospitality conference in Seattle, one of those industry events full of panels, networking mixers, and vendor booths. I'd driven up from Portland for the day, planning to attend a few sessions on restaurant finance and supply chain management. James was the keynote speaker, a 58-year-old retired Michelin-starred chef who'd built Morrison Hospitality Group, a collection of 15 successful restaurants across the West Coast. He spoke about the intersection of culinary excellence and business acumen, about how too many talented chefs failed because they didn't understand operations and finance. His talk resonated with me deeply. Afterward, during the networking session, I waited in line to speak with him. I expected a quick handshake and a business card exchange, but James was genuinely interested in everyone he met. When I introduced myself and mentioned I'd turned around a struggling bistro in Portland, his eyes lit up. "Tell me more," he said. We ended up talking for 45 minutes, standing in a corner of the conference hall while other attendees milled around us. I showed him the data on my phone, Margot's transformation over 6 months, the financial projections I'd built, the customer satisfaction metrics. I explained how I'd approach the problem systematically, operations first, then staff training, then customer experience design. "You understand something that 90% of culinary school graduates don't," James said finally. "You understand that a restaurant isn't just food, it's a system. And you understand the business, not just the art." He handed me his card. "I have 3 restaurants in my portfolio that are underperforming. I've been looking for a consultant who can do turnarounds. Are you interested?" I thought he was being polite, that nothing would come of it. But 2 weeks later, he called. "I'm serious about this, Sophie. I want you to look at my restaurant in Eugene. It's hemorrhaging money and I can't figure out why. If you can stabilize it in 6 months, there are 2 more I need help with." The pay was $15,000 per project, plus performance bonuses. It was more money than I'd ever made from consulting. "Why me?" I asked. "You could hire anyone." "Because you see what other people miss," James said. "Because you care about hospitality, not just profit, and because you're hungry. I can hear it in how you talk about your work. You want to build something real." He was right. I did. The Eugene restaurant was a disaster. Poor location, confused concept, undertrained staff, and a menu that tried to be everything to everyone. I spent 3 weeks just observing, watching service, talking to staff, analyzing the numbers, eating the food, understanding the customer base. Then I rebuilt it from the ground up. New menu focused on 3 things done excellently instead of 15 things done poorly. Complete retraining of front-of-house staff. New scheduling system that reduced labor costs without sacrificing service quality. Marketing campaign that repositioned the restaurant as a neighborhood gem rather than trying to compete with downtown fine dining. 6 months later, the restaurant's revenue had increased by 40%. Customer satisfaction went from 3.2 stars to 4.7 stars. The staff turnover rate dropped to almost 0 because people actually enjoyed working there. James called me the day the numbers came in. "You're a magician, Sophie. Let's do the next one." The second restaurant was in Bend, a beautiful space with terrible operations. Same approach. Observe, analyze, rebuild. 4 months later, it was profitable for the first time in 2 years. By the time I turned 29, I'd transformed 3 of James's restaurants. I'd made $45,000 in consulting fees on top of my regular salary. I'd built a reputation in the Morrison Hospitality Group as someone who could diagnose problems other consultants missed and implement solutions that actually worked. And I'd kept all of it secret from my family. At Thanksgiving dinner in San Francisco that year, my mother asked, "Are you still working at that restaurant in Portland?" "Yeah," I said, "still there." Madison, fresh from her first year at Harvard Law, looked at me with something close to pity. "Well, at least you have job security in the service industry. People always need to eat, right?" "Right," I agreed and took a bite of turkey. My father changed the subject to Madison's upcoming internship at a prestigious law firm in Boston. I sat there, listening to them discuss her future. The cases she'd work on, the partners she'd impress, the trajectory that would lead her to an associate position and eventually partnership. No one asked about my life. No one wondered what I did all day, what challenges I faced, what victories I'd achieved. I was Sophie, the daughter who managed a restaurant in Portland. That's all they needed to know. But here's what they didn't know. James Morrison had just made me an offer that would change everything. "Let's make this official," he'd said over coffee in Portland the week before Thanksgiving. "Morrison and Chen Hospitality Consulting. You and me, equal partners. We formalize what we've been doing. Restaurant turnarounds, operational consulting, staff training. I bring the reputation and the network. You bring the expertise and the hustle. We split everything 50-50. I stared at him. "You want me to be your business partner?" "I want you to be my successor," James corrected. "I'm 58 years old, Sophie. I'm looking at retirement in the next 5 to 10 years. I need someone who can carry this forward, who shares my values about hospitality and excellence. That's you. But I'm 29, and you've accomplished more in 5 years than most people do in 20. Stop underestimating yourself. Everyone else does that for you. Don't do it to yourself." The offer was real. James had his lawyer draw up partnership papers. Morrison and Chen Hospitality Consulting, LLC, established November 2023. We'd split revenue 50-50 after expenses. We'd take on turnaround clients across Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. We'd build a reputation as the go-to consultants for struggling restaurants. More than that, James introduced me to his business partner, Elena Rodriguez, a brilliant CFO with decades of experience in restaurant finance. Elena became my mentor in the business side of hospitality, teaching me things about capital structure, investment returns, and growth strategies that I'd never learned at Cornell. Together, the three of us started building something bigger than just consulting. We started talking about opening our own restaurant. "Not just any restaurant," James said. "The restaurant. The one that showcases everything we believe about hospitality, local ingredients, sustainable practices, exceptional service, and community connection. Portland deserves a flagship, fine casual dining experience." We found the perfect location. A space on the Willamette River with floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick, and enough room for 90 seats plus a bar. The rent was steep, but the visibility was unbeatable. Elena ran the numbers. "We need $800,000 to do this right. Build out equipment, 6 months of operating capital until we break even." James could put in $400,000. Elena could do $250,000. That left $150,000. "I have it," I said quietly. Both of them looked at me in surprise. From consulting fees, my savings from Margot's, and some stock investments I made last year, I explained. "I've been putting away $1,000 to $1,500 a month for 5 years. I have $160,000 liquid. I can put in $150,000. James smiled. "Then we're doing this. Morrison, Rodriguez, and Chen. The Riverside." The Riverside. Our restaurant. My restaurant. We signed the lease in October. Construction started immediately. We were aiming for a March opening. I spent every spare moment working on the details: menu development, staff hiring, supplier relationships, marketing strategy. This wasn't just a job. This was the culmination of everything I'd been working toward since I was 10 years old, cooking that first dinner for my family and hoping someone would notice. The consulting business was thriving too. By the end of the year, we had 12 active clients across 3 states. My share of the revenue put my annual income at $180,000, plus equity in the Riverside. I was 29 years old. I was a co-founder of 2 businesses. I was building the kind of career I'd always dreamed of, and my family had no idea. When my mother called in December to invite me to my father's retirement party in San Francisco, I almost declined. The thought of going back, of pretending everything was fine, of watching them celebrate Madison while ignoring me, it all felt exhausting. But something made me say yes. Maybe I needed to see them one more time as the person they thought I was before I became someone they wouldn't recognize. Of course I'll be there, I told my mother. I wouldn't miss Dad's big day. Wonderful, she said, relief in her voice. Madison's giving a speech. It's going to be such a special night. I hung up and looked around my studio apartment. Still tiny, still just 350 square feet, but now filled with business plans, contractor quotes for the Riverside, and a laptop open to a consulting proposal for a new client in Seattle. The gap between who I was and who they thought I was had never been wider. In 3 months, the Riverside would open. In 3 months, everything would change. But first, I had to get through my father's retirement party. I had no idea how much that night would cost all of us. The retirement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in late February, just 3 weeks before the Riverside's grand opening. I drove down from Portland on Friday, the 10-hour trip giving me plenty of time to mentally prepare for what I knew would be a difficult weekend. My Honda Civic, now with 200,000 miles and a new dent on the driver's side door, felt like armor, a reminder that I'd built everything I had without their help. I stayed at a budget hotel near the airport rather than at my parents' house. When my mother called to ask why, I told her I had early morning calls with contractors and didn't want to disturb anyone. The truth was simpler. I couldn't sleep under that roof anymore. Couldn't wake up in my childhood bedroom, where every wall held memories of being overlooked. The party was being held at my father's law firm, a sleek high-rise in the financial district with panoramic views of the bay. The firm had reserved their entire event space on the 40th floor for the occasion. My mother had been planning it for months, treating it like a retirement gala for a Supreme Court justice rather than a senior partner at a mid-sized firm. There will be about 150 people, she'd told me on the phone weeks earlier. All the partners, associates, judges your father has worked with, family friends, some professors from my university. It's going to be quite the evening. What she didn't say, but what I understood, was that it would be another stage for Madison to shine, another opportunity for my parents to showcase their successful daughter while I stood in the wings, invisible. I arrived at the venue at 6:30, 30 minutes before the official start time. I wore a navy cocktail dress I'd bought for industry events, elegant but understated, professional without trying too hard. I debated wearing something that screamed success, but that felt petty. I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here because it was my father's milestone, and despite everything, some part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The event space was already bustling with caterers setting up, bartenders arranging bottles, and my mother directing traffic like a general commanding troops. She saw me and waved, her face lighting up in a way that made my chest ache. She did love me, in her way. She just didn't see me. "Sophie, oh, you look lovely. Come here, I need your help." And there it was, the thing that had defined our relationship my entire life. My mother handed me a checklist. "Can you coordinate with the catering manager? Make sure the appetizers come out on time. The bar is fully stocked, and the servers know the timing for the speeches. You're so good at this sort of thing, and I'm overwhelmed." I looked down at the list, then at my mother's expectant face. She wasn't trying to insult me. In her mind, she was playing to my strengths, utilizing my expertise. She didn't realize she was reducing me to hired help at my own father's party. "Sure, Mom," I said, taking the list. What else could I say? I spent the next hour doing exactly what she'd asked, falling into the familiar role of the competent, invisible daughter who made sure everything ran smoothly while others took credit. I checked in with the catering manager, a stressed-looking woman in her 30s who was relieved to have someone who spoke her language. I verified the bar setup, confirmed the timing for dinner service, and made sure the AV equipment was ready for the speeches. As I was reviewing the evening's schedule with one of the servers, I overheard a conversation near the private room adjacent to the main event space. The door was slightly ajar, and I recognized my father's voice immediately, followed by Madison's laugh. I should have walked away. I should have focused on the checklist, on getting through the evening, on getting back to Portland and my real life, but something made me stop. Made me stand there holding a tray of canapes that a server had just asked me to help carry in. "I'm so proud of you, Madison," my father was saying. "Top 10% of your class at Harvard Law. You're going to be a phenomenal attorney. The $500,000 we invested in your education. Best decision your mother and I ever made." "Thanks, Dad." Though honestly, Sophie's probably wondering why she didn't get the same opportunity. My father sighed, and I could picture him shaking his head in that way he did when discussing disappointing topics. Sophie made her choices. We tried to guide her toward law, toward medicine, toward something with real potential. But she insisted on hospitality. You can't help someone who won't help themselves. She works hard, though, Madison said. But there was something performative about it, like she was saying what she thought she should rather than what she believed. "Hard work isn't enough if you're working in the wrong direction," my father replied. "Sophie's good at what she does, managing restaurants, coordinating service, that sort of thing. But there's a ceiling to that kind of career. She'll never break through to real success, real influence. She's only good enough for a diner job, essentially. Service work with a fancier title. At least she's doing what she's good at," Madison added. "Serving people, bringing them food, making them comfortable. That's her calling, right? Some people are meant to lead, and some people are meant to support. Sophie's a supporter." They both laughed. Not cruelly, but casually, like they were discussing the weather or the traffic on the drive over. That's what hurt the most. It wasn't malicious. It was simply how they saw the world, how they saw me. A fixed hierarchy where Madison occupied the top tier, and I was permanently relegated to the bottom. I stood there frozen, that tray of appetizers in my hands, wearing my management uniform, the cocktail dress that suddenly felt like a waitress's outfit. My vision blurred, my hands trembled. The carefully wrapped gift I'd brought for my father, a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, I'd found at a rare bookstore in Portland because I knew it was his favorite book, felt like the most pathetic gesture in the world. Nobody saw me standing there. Nobody ever did. Guests started arriving at 7 o'clock, and the event space filled quickly with San Francisco's legal and academic elite. I recognized several faces from my childhood. Judges who'd come to dinner parties, senior partners from my father's firm, professors from my mother's university. They all looked polished, successful, exactly the kind of people my parents wanted in their orbit. I stayed busy coordinating with the catering staff, checking on drink refills, making sure everything ran smoothly. It was easier than socializing, easier than explaining who I was and what I did. Whenever someone asked, I kept my answers vague. "I work in hospitality management in Portland." They'd nod politely and move on to more interesting conversations. Madison arrived fashionably late, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked stunning, tall, confident, every inch the Harvard Law student destined for greatness. People gravitated toward her immediately. I watched her hold court near the bar, charming a group of judges and senior partners with stories about her coursework and summer internship prospects. My father stood at the center of the room, beaming with pride every time he looked at her. He introduced her to everyone as my daughter Madison, top of her class at Harvard Law. When someone asked about me, he said, "My other daughter, Sophie, works in restaurant management in Oregon," and quickly changed the subject. I felt like I was watching my life from outside my body, present but not really there, seen but not acknowledged. I kept my face neutral, my smile pleasant, My role as the dutiful daughter who made sure everything behind the scenes ran perfectly. Dinner was served at 7:45. I'd been assigned to a table near the back with some distant cousins and family friends I barely knew. Madison sat at the head table with my parents, the place of honor surrounded by the most important guests. Every time I glanced in that direction, I saw my father leaning toward her, engaged and animated in a way he never was with me. The food was excellent, probably a $200 per plate menu, knowing my mother's taste. I ate mechanically, making small talk with the people at my table about Portland's weather and how different it was from San Francisco. Nobody asked about my career in any detail, which was fine. I'd stopped expecting people to care a long time ago. At 8:30, the speeches began. The managing partner of my father's firm went first, delivering a warm tribute about my father's 35 years of service, his dedication to clients, his mentorship of younger attorneys. It was genuine and well-deserved. My father was a good lawyer, respected in his field. Then my mother spoke, sharing stories about their life together, their partnership, the family they'd built. She mentioned both daughters, but the reference to me was brief. Sophie, who's making her own way in Portland. The reference to Madison took up 3 minutes. Her achievements, her promise, her bright future. Then it was Madison's turn. She walked to the microphone with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted her place in the world, who'd never wondered if she was enough. Her speech was polished, articulate, full of humor and heart. She talked about growing up watching our father prepare for trials, learning from his dedication and integrity. "Dad taught me what excellence looks like," Madison said, her voice carrying across the room. "He showed me that success requires not just talent, but commitment, sacrifice, and the courage to pursue something meaningful. He invested in my education, $500,000 for Harvard Law, because he knew I'd use that investment to make a difference in the world. Not everyone gets that kind of support, that kind of belief in their potential." She paused, and I saw her eyes flick toward me for just a second. Not everyone has the capacity for this level of achievement. Some people need to be practical about their limitations, about what they can realistically accomplish, and that's okay. The world needs all kinds of people, those who lead and those who support, those who shape policy and those who, serve others in more direct ways. The implication was clear, even if the words were carefully chosen. Madison was the leader. I was the servant. The room applauded. People stood, raising glasses to my father and to Madison, celebrating their success and their bond. I remained seated, clapping politely, feeling every word like a knife. After the speeches, guests mingled over dessert and coffee. I wanted to leave, to walk out of that event space and drive straight back to Portland, but I couldn't. That would create drama, would make me the problem, would confirm their belief that I was too sensitive, too emotional, that I couldn't handle the truth about my limitations. So I stayed. I smiled. I made small talk. I played my role. I was standing near the dessert table, pretending to be interested in the array of pita fours, when a woman approached me. She was in her mid-50s, elegant in a way that suggested both power and kindness, wearing a charcoal suit with a pin on her lapel that read California Superior Court. "Sophie Chen?" she asked. I turned, surprised that anyone here knew my name beyond Michael's other daughter. "Yes?" She smiled warmly and extended her hand. "Sarah Martinez. I'm a judge in the Superior Court and a longtime friend of your father's. But more relevantly, I've been following your work. James Morrison speaks very highly of you. I had no idea you were Michael's daughter." The world tilted slightly. "You know James?" "I met him at a food policy conference last year. He mentioned his brilliant consulting partner who was revolutionizing restaurant operations in Portland. When he said Sophie Chen, I never connected it to Michael's family." She looked around the room, lowering her voice slightly. "I have to say, after watching tonight's speeches, I'm a bit confused about why you haven't shared your success with your family." I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that I'd stopped sharing because every achievement was met with dismissal or comparison to Madison's superior accomplishments? Before I could formulate a response, another person joined our conversation. He was in his late 40s, Asian American, wearing an expensive suit and a warm smile. "Did I hear someone mention Sophie Chen and James Morrison?" he asked. "David Nguyen. I run Bay Area Hospitality Investment Group. I've been trying to get a meeting with Morrison and Chen Consulting for 6 months. Your turnaround portfolio is extraordinary. 95% success rate? That's unheard of in our industry." My father, who'd been standing nearby talking to a colleague, turned at the sound of my name. His expression was confused, like he couldn't quite process why these important people were talking to his daughter. "You know Sophie?" he asked David Nguyen. "Know her? I've been studying her work. Sophie's one of the most sought-after restaurant consultants on the West Coast. Morrison and Chen just signed 3 new clients last month alone. And from what I hear, they're opening their own flagship restaurant in Portland in a few weeks." Judge Martinez nodded. "My nephew owns a bistro in Portland. Sophie saved his business last year. He credits her with everything: the operational overhaul, the staff training, the financial restructuring. Said she was the best investment he ever made." My father's face had gone pale. "Sophie's consulting work? Consulting?" David Nguyen looked genuinely surprised. "She's a business partner in one of the most successful hospitality consulting firms in the Pacific Northwest. Morrison and Chen has, 12 active clients now? And the new restaurant project is getting massive buzz in the industry." Madison, who drifted over during this exchange, stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "Sophie's a restaurant manager," she said slowly, as if explaining something to confused children. "She works for someone else." "Worked," David corrected gently. "She's been a co-founder of Morrison and Chen for over a year now, equal partner with James Morrison. They've been doing restaurant turnarounds across 3 states." The small group around us had grown. More people were listening now, sensing something significant unfolding. A third person joined the conversation, a woman in her early 40s with short hair and intelligent eyes, holding a notepad. "Sophie Chen, Rachel Kim, San Francisco Chronicle. I was actually planning to reach out to you next week. We're running a feature on 30 under 30 food innovators for our Sunday magazine, and you're one of our profiles. Had no idea you were connected to tonight's guest of honor." The air felt thick, hard to breathe. I could see my father processing this information, see Madison's confident expression crack into confusion, see my mother standing nearby with her hand over her mouth. "I don't understand," my father said quietly. "Sophie, what are they talking about?" Before I could answer, the room's energy shifted. James Morrison walked through the door. James wasn't supposed to be here. We'd talked about the party last week, and I'd told him I was coming alone, that it was just family stuff, nothing to do with work. But there he was, looking distinguished in a dark suit, carrying an envelope and scanning the room until his eyes found mine. He walked over with the easy confidence of someone who belonged everywhere, nodding politely to the gathered group. "Sorry I'm late, Michael. Congratulations on your retirement." He turned to me, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "Sophie, I brought the contract for the Riverside. 3 investors just committed another $500,000. We're looking at a $2 million valuation at opening, and we haven't even opened yet." The room went completely silent. James finally seemed to notice something was wrong. He looked around at the stunned faces, at my father's shocked expression, at Madison's disbelief. "Did I interrupt something?" My father found his voice first. "Business partner? What is he talking about, Sophie?" James's eyebrows rose. "Business partner? Sophie's my co-founder. Morrison and Chen Hospitality Consulting. We've been in business together for over a year." He looked genuinely confused now. "You didn't tell them?" "Tell us what?" my mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Not just my family, but the judges, the lawyers, the business people, Rachel Kim with her notepad, all waiting for my answer. "I tried to tell you," I said quietly, looking at my father, "multiple times over the years. But every time I shared something about my work, you dismissed it. Every achievement was minimized or compared unfavorably to Madison's. So I stopped sharing. I didn't hide my success. You just never asked because you'd already decided I didn't have any." David Nguyen, sensing the depth of the family drama, tried to help. "For what it's worth, Mr. Chen, your daughter is exceptional at what she does. Her consulting firm generated $1.2 million in revenue last year. Sophie's personal income was over $180,000, plus equity in the Riverside, the most anticipated restaurant opening in Portland this year." Judge Martinez added, "She's also on the advisory board at Portland State University's Hospitality Management Program and sits on the Oregon Restaurant Association's Emerging Leaders Council. She's spoken at national conferences. She's exactly the kind of young professional we need more of." Rachel Kim was writing furiously in her notebook. "This is actually a fascinating angle for the story. The daughter whose family didn't recognize her success because it came in an industry they didn't value. This is exactly the kind of narrative our readers connect with." My father looked like someone had punched him. My mother had tears in her eyes. Madison stood frozen, her earlier confidence completely shattered. $500,000, my father repeated, looking at James. "For a restaurant?" "Actually, the total investment is closer to $800,000, James clarified. "Sophie put in $150,000 of her own money from her consulting earnings and savings over the past 5 years. I put in $400,000 and my business partner, Elena, contributed $250,000. But with the new investors David mentioned, we're expanding the project scope." My mother's voice broke. "You saved $150,000? "I told you I was working," I said simply. "I told you I was building something. You just assumed it was small because that's all you could imagine for me." Madison finally spoke, and her voice was small, uncertain. "You let us think you were just a manager." "I was a manager," I said, "and there's nothing wrong with that. But you treated manager like it was the ceiling of what I could achieve, like it was proof of my limitations. You never asked what else I was doing, because you didn't believe there could be anything else." The crowd around us had grown larger. People were whispering, comparing notes, some looking sympathetic toward me, others clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding at what was supposed to be a celebration. David Nguyen cleared his throat. "I should mention, and I hope this isn't inappropriate, but my firm has been wanting to partner with Morrison and Chen for a while. We see tremendous growth potential. Sophie, if you're open to it, I'd love to discuss potential investment opportunities for expansion. You've proven the model works. Now it's about scaling." "I'd love that conversation," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Give me a call next week." He handed me his card, then nodded politely to my father. "You should be very proud, Mr. Chen. Both your daughters are exceptional. They've just chosen different paths to success." But the look on David's face suggested he knew exactly what had happened here tonight. Knew that pride had been in short supply for one daughter and abundant for the other. Judge Martinez touched my arm gently. "I need to go, but Sophie, please give my number to James. I'd like to discuss potential collaborations. We're working on some food policy initiatives in California, and your perspective would be valuable." As the influential guests drifted away, my family and I were left standing in an awkward circle. The party continued around us, people eating dessert, networking, celebrating my father's retirement, but our little corner had become an island of uncomfortable silence. Finally, my father spoke. "Sophie, I don't know what to say." "You could start with, 'I'm sorry,'" I suggested quietly. "You could acknowledge that you treated my career like it was worthless for 7 years. You could admit that you gave Madison $500,000 while telling me I wasn't worth investing in." "We were trying to protect you." "From what?" I interrupted. "From success? From building something meaningful? You weren't protecting me, Dad. You were protecting your own narrow definition of what success looks like. And in the process, you made me feel like I didn't matter." Madison's face was flushed. "I didn't know," she said, and there was genuine distress in her voice. "Sophie, I swear I had no idea you were doing all this. Why didn't you tell us?" "I did tell you," I said, meeting her eyes. "At Thanksgiving last year, I mentioned I was working on a restaurant project. You said, 'At least you have job security in the service industry.' You made it sound like I was clinging to the only thing I was capable of, like I should be grateful to have any job at all. I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. Maybe you didn't mean to be cruel, but you meant what you said. You believed it. You all did." My mother stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I let her take it, but I didn't squeeze back. "We made terrible mistakes," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "Sophie, we love you. We've always loved you. We didn't understand." "You didn't try to understand," I corrected gently. "Understanding requires curiosity, requires asking questions, requires believing that someone might have something valuable to share. You never asked about my work beyond surface pleasantries. You never visited Portland to see what I was building. You assumed hospitality was a fallback career for someone who couldn't do anything else." My father sank into a nearby chair, looking every one of his 60 years. "I was wrong," he said finally. "I measured success by my own standards. Law, prestige, traditional markers of achievement. I couldn't see that you were building something equally valuable in your own field. I couldn't see you at all." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from him. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Rachel Kim approached cautiously. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'd really like to include this story in our feature, with your permission, of course. The narrative of family reconciliation around success is powerful. It could help a lot of young people who feel like they're on unconventional paths." I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted to keep this private, to not expose our family dysfunction to the San Francisco Chronicle's 1 million readers, but another part of me thought about all the other Sophie Chens out there, the kids pursuing hospitality, the arts, trades, any career path their families didn't understand or value. "Okay," I said, "but I want editorial approval on anything about my family. You can talk about my career all you want. The family stuff stays focused on the broader issue of how we value different types of work." Rachel nodded, looking pleased. "Absolutely. I'll send you drafts before we publish." The party was winding down now. Guests were starting to leave, coming over to congratulate my father one last time, some of them shooting curious glances in my direction after hearing whispers of what had transpired. James Morrison appeared at my elbow. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," I admitted. This wasn't how I wanted them to find out. "Sometimes the truth comes out on its own timeline," he said. "For what it's worth, I think they're genuinely shocked. That's different from genuinely sorry, but it's a start." I looked at my family. My father slumped in his chair, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a napkin, Madison standing alone looking lost and confused. They looked smaller than they had at the start of the evening, diminished by the realization that they'd been wrong about something fundamental for so long. "I need some air," I told James. I walked out onto the venue's balcony, the cold February wind whipping my hair around my face. The San Francisco skyline glittered below, familiar and foreign at the same time. I'd grown up here, but it had never felt like home. Portland was home now. My studio apartment, my consulting work, my restaurant about to open, my community of people who saw me for who I actually was. My phone buzzed, a text from Elena. James told me what happened. You holding up? Barely, I typed back. But I'm okay. Good, because we have 17 new reservation requests for the Riverside today, including one from a Chronicle food critic. Whatever's happening down there, it's generating buzz. I smiled despite everything. The Riverside, our restaurant, opening in 3 weeks. Madison found me on the balcony 10 minutes later. She stood beside me silently for a while, both of us looking out at the city lights. I've been jealous of you my whole life, she said finally. I turned to her surprised. What? You always knew what you wanted, Madison continued, her voice soft. You loved cooking from the time you were little. You had this passion, this certainty. I followed Dad's path because I didn't know what else to do. Law seemed impressive, seemed important. But I hate it, Sophie. I hate law school. I'm drowning in $300,000 of debt for a career that makes me miserable. I didn't know what to say. In my mind, Madison had always been the golden child, the one who had everything. It had never occurred to me that her perfect path might be a prison. I'm sorry, she said, and this time it sounded genuine. I'm sorry I made you feel small. I think maybe making you small made me feel bigger, made my choices feel more valid. If hospitality was lesser, then law was greater. If you were settling, then I was succeeding. I needed that to be true because otherwise, I'd have to admit, I was just doing what Dad wanted, not what I wanted. What do you want? I asked. Madison laughed, but it was sad. I have no idea. Isn't that pathetic? I'm 29 years old, top of my class at Harvard Law, and I don't know what I actually want. I just know it's not this. We stood there together, two sisters who'd spent a lifetime on opposite sides of our parents' approval, finally seeing each other as people instead of roles. You could figure it out, I said quietly. It's not too late to change direction. With $300,000 in loans, people do it. It's hard, but it's possible. And it's better than spending the rest of your life in a career that makes you miserable just because you invested in it. Madison nodded slowly. When's your restaurant opening? March 20th. Can I come? To the opening? I looked at her, the stranger who was also my sister, and tried to find any trace of the woman who'd smirked while my father called me worthless. All I saw was someone lost, realizing that the path they'd chosen was built on someone else's dreams. Maybe, I said finally. Let's see how the next few weeks go. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even acceptance. But it was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. The next morning, I checked out of my hotel at dawn and started the drive back to Portland. I hadn't slept much. My mind kept replaying the previous evening, the moment of revelation, the shocked faces, the slow collapse of their illusions about my life. My phone rang as I was crossing the Golden Gate Bridge. My father's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sophie. His voice sounded tired, older than it had yesterday. Can we talk? Really talk? I'm already on my way back to Portland, Dad. I know. Your mother told me you checked out. I'm asking if you'll give me a chance to apologize properly. Not at the party, not in front of everyone. Just us. I pulled over at a viewpoint looking back at the city I was leaving behind. I'm listening. He took a deep breath. I've spent the past 12 hours thinking about every conversation we've had about your career. Every dismissal, every comparison to Madison, every time I made you feel like what you'd chosen wasn't enough. And Sophie, I was wrong. Not just wrong about the value of hospitality as an industry, but wrong about you. What changed? I asked. the opinions of people you respect, the dollar amounts involved, the prestige of my consulting clients. All of it, he admitted. And that's what makes this so much worse. I needed strangers to tell me my daughter was successful before I could see it myself. I needed the external validation of judges and investors and journalists before I could value what you'd built. That says something terrible about me. Yeah, I agreed. It does. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't deserve that, but I want you to know. I'm proud of you. Not because of the money or the impressive client list or the restaurant. I'm proud because you did this, despite having no support from the people who should have supported you the most. You believed in yourself when we didn't. That takes a strength I don't think I have. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. I needed to hear that 7 years ago, Dad, when I got into Cornell, when I got my first management position, when I turned around my first restaurant. I needed you to be proud of me before everyone else was. I know, and I can't go back and fix that, but I can try to do better going forward, if you'll let me. I don't know if I can, I said honestly. Trust isn't rebuilt with one conversation. It takes time. It takes showing up consistently, not just when it's convenient or impressive. I understand. What can I do? How do I start? I thought about that for a long moment, watching the fog roll across the bay below me. Come to the opening, March 20th. Come to Portland and see what I've built. Not as an investor or a critic, but as my father. Actually see me in my element for once. I'll be there, he said immediately. Both of us will. Your mother wants to talk to you too when you're ready. Not yet, I said. I need some space right now. I need to focus on the restaurant, on my work, on the life I've built. Contact me in a few weeks and maybe we can figure out what a relationship between us looks like going forward. Okay, thank you for answering the phone. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, processing everything. The revelation at the party felt surreal in daylight, like something from a movie rather than my actual life. But it had happened. The truth was out. My family knew who I really was. The question now was whether that knowledge would change anything fundamental between us, or whether we'd just have better facts about each other without having better relationships. I drove the rest of the way to Portland with that question circling in my mind, never quite finding an answer. The 3 weeks before the Riverside's opening passed in a blur of final preparations. The revelation at my father's party had generated unexpected media attention. Rachel Kim's feature in the Chronicle came out 2 weeks later with the headline, "The Daughter They Underestimated," how Sophie Chen built a restaurant empire while her family thought she was just a manager. The article was sensitively written, focusing more on the broader cultural issue of how we value different types of work, rather than making my family look villainous. But the reaction was intense. The story got picked up by other outlets, shared thousands of times on social media, and generated a wave of messages from people who'd experienced similar dynamics in their own families. "You're the daughter I never knew I needed to read about," one woman wrote. "My parents wanted me to be a doctor. I became a pastry chef. They still introduce me as our daughter who cooks. This story gave me permission to pursue automotive repair instead of engineering," a young man messaged. "Thank you for sharing this." The attention boosted interest in the Riverside exponentially. Our reservation wait list grew to over 1,000 people. Food bloggers were calling for preview tastings. Portland Monthly wanted to feature us in their April issue. It was overwhelming and thrilling and terrifying all at once. My parents called twice in those 3 weeks. I let the calls go to voicemail both times, not ready yet to engage. Madison sent several texts, awkward, searching messages that showed she was genuinely trying but didn't know how. "I've been thinking about what you said," one text read, "about figuring out what I actually want. I met with a career counselor at Harvard. First time I've admitted to anyone there that I'm not sure law is right for me. I didn't respond, but I saved the message. James and Elena noticed I was more focused, more driven than usual in those final weeks. "You're running on something beyond caffeine," Elena observed during a late-night planning session. "Spite? Determination? Proving something?" "All of the above," I admitted. "But mostly I just want the Riverside to be everything we envisioned. Not for my family. For us. For the community. For everyone who believed in this when it was just an idea." Opening night arrived on a perfect March evening. Clear skies, temperatures in the low 60s, the Willamette River reflecting the sunset in shades of gold and pink. Our dining room looked stunning. Exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, Edison bulbs casting warm light over reclaimed wood tables, fresh flowers from local growers on every surface. The kitchen was immaculate, ready. Our staff had been training for weeks and were excited, nervous, prepared. The menu was small but perfect. 12 items that showcased Oregon ingredients and sophisticated technique without being pretentious. At 5 o'clock, an hour before our first guests were due to arrive, I stood in the middle of the dining room and let myself feel it. The weight of everything that had led to this moment. Every dismissed achievement, every comparison to Madison, every time I'd questioned my own value, every late night working 3 jobs in college, every consulting project where I'd proven I could transform failing restaurants, every dollar I'd saved, every relationship I'd built in the Portland food community. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was physical proof that I'd been right about myself all along. James found me there, lost in thought. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said and meant it. "I'm good. Is everyone here?" "Staff's ready. Elena's doing final checks on the POS system. First reservations start arriving in 45 minutes. He paused. "Your family just called. They're here, in Portland. They want to know if they can come tonight." My heart rate accelerated. "They came?" "Your dad said he promised he'd be here for the opening. He didn't want to intrude, but he wanted you to know they're in town. He gave me his hotel name in case you want to reach out." I looked around the Riverside. My restaurant, my achievement, my proof of worth. I thought about my father sitting in some hotel room downtown, waiting to see if I'd invite him to witness what I'd built. "Tell them they can come," I said finally. "At 8 o'clock, last seating, but they come as regular guests. They wait for a table like everyone else. No special treatment." James nodded, understanding. "I'll let them know." The first guests arrived at 6, and from that moment everything else fell away. Service was everything I dreamed it would be. Smooth, warm, professional. The food was exceptional. Every table seemed happy, engaged, enjoying the experience we'd worked so hard to create. Portland Monthly's food critic came at 7, incognito but identifiable by the way she photographed every dish and took detailed notes. David Nguyen showed up with 3 partners from his investment firm. Judge Martinez came with her husband, having driven down from San Francisco specifically for this. And at 8 o'clock, my family walked through the door. My father looked older than he had at his retirement party. Or maybe I was just seeing him clearly for the first time, without the lens of desperate hope that he'd finally be proud of me. My mother clung to his arm, nervous, her eyes scanning the restaurant until they found me. Madison walked slightly behind them, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual designer clothes, looking smaller somehow, less certain. I nodded to our host, who seated them at a 4-top near the window. Not the best table in the house, but not the worst either. Fair. I let them settle in, let them look around the space, let them see the full restaurant. Every table occupied, wait staff moving efficiently, the open kitchen visible through glass panels showing our chefs at work. I wanted them to see it all before I approached. After 10 minutes, I walked over to their table. My mother's eyes filled with tears the moment she saw me. My father stood up, uncertain, like he didn't know whether to shake my hand or hug me. Madison stayed seated, watching me carefully. "Welcome to the riverside," I said, keeping my voice professional, neutral. "I'm glad you could make it." "Sophie." My father's voice broke slightly. "This place it's beautiful, it's incredible." "Thank you. Our menu tonight features locally sourced ingredients from 12 Oregon farms and fisheries. Your server will be right with you." I started to turn away, but my mother reached out, catching my hand. "Please," she said. "Can you sit with us? Just for a minute?" I looked at her. This woman who'd loved me but never seen me, who'd tried to be fair but had never noticed she was being anything but. "I can't," I said gently. "I'm working. This is opening night. I have 80 other guests to take care of." I pulled my hand away and walked back toward the kitchen, my heart pounding, my eyes stinging with tears I refused to shed in my own restaurant. James intercepted me near the kitchen door. "You okay?" "No," I admitted, "but I will be." I threw myself back into service, checking in with tables, supporting the staff, troubleshooting small issues before they became problems. Every time I glanced toward my family's table, I saw them sitting quietly, talking little, watching me work. They saw me in my element for the first time, not serving in the diminishing way they'd always imagined, but leading, creating, building community. They saw guests light up when I stopped at their tables. They saw staff look to me for guidance. They saw the restaurant function as a complex system that I'd designed and now conducted. They finally saw me. After they'd finished dinner, and I'd made sure they received the same excellent service as everyone else, nothing more, nothing less, my father asked to speak with me. I met him by the host's stand, keeping physical distance between us. "I don't have the words," he said simply. "I've been trying all night to find something adequate to say, and I don't have it. This restaurant, what you've built here, the respect people clearly have for you, Sophie, I'm sorry, doesn't begin to cover it." "You're right," I agreed. "It doesn't." "Can we try?" he asked. "Can we try to build something new between us? Not pretending the past didn't happen, but seeing if there's a future where I actually know my daughter and she can trust me." I looked past him to where my mother and Madison were standing near the exit, waiting. My mother looked hopeful and terrified. Madison looked like someone who'd just realized she didn't know her own sister at all. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I spent 7 years trying to get you to see me, to value what I was doing, to believe I was worth something. I can't forget that. I can't pretend it didn't shape who I am. And I definitely can't go back to how things were. Me trying to prove myself while you dismiss everything I achieve." "I wouldn't want that either," my father said. "What I want is to start over, slowly, with you in control of what that looks like." "Then here's what I need," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "I need you to stop comparing me to Madison. We're different people with different strengths. I need you to respect my career choices even if you don't fully understand them. I need you to show up, not just when it's impressive or convenient, but because you want to be part of my life. And I need you to never, ever make me feel like I'm not enough again." "I can do that," he said. "I will do that. What else?" "Time," I said. "I need time to figure out if I can trust you again. If we can have a relationship that's real instead of just going through the motions of being family." He nodded. "Okay, we'll go at your pace. Can we call? Maybe once a week?" "Once a month," I countered. "For now, let's see how that goes." "Once a month," he agreed. My mother approached then, hesitant. "Sophie, I'm so proud of you. I know I should have said that years ago, should have said it at every milestone, but I'm saying it now. You're remarkable." "Thank you," I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. Her words didn't erase the years of hurt, but they mattered nonetheless. Madison hung back, not approaching, just raising one hand in a small wave. I nodded back. We'd talk eventually, maybe, but not tonight. After they left, I stood in the restaurant as the last guests finished their meals, as my staff began the closing checklist, as the adrenaline of opening night started to fade into exhausted satisfaction. Elena found me by the window, looking out at the river. "We did it," she said softly. "We did," I agreed. "The Chronicle critic loved everything. David Nguyen wants to invest. We have reservations booked solid for the next 3 months. Sophie, this is a success by any measure." "I know. So why do you look sad?" I thought about that question for a moment, watching the lights reflect on the water. Because I spent so long wanting my family to see this moment, and now that they have, I realize their seeing it doesn't change anything fundamental. I'm still the same person I was this morning. The restaurant is still the same achievement. Their recognition doesn't make it more real or valuable. It just makes it hurt less. "That's not nothing," Elena pointed out. "No," I agreed. "It's not nothing." James joined us, carrying 3 glasses of wine. "To the riverside," he said, raising his glass. "To taking risks, building dreams, and proving the doubters wrong." We clinked glasses, and I let myself feel it. The full weight of this moment. Not the moment my family finally saw me, but the moment I realized I didn't need them to. The riverside wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about creating something beautiful and meaningful with people who believed in me from the start. It was about building a space where people felt valued and cared for, the kind of space I'd never had growing up. That was worth more than any amount of parental approval. 3 months later, the riverside was thriving beyond our projections. We'd been featured in Bon Appetit, Eater, and Food and Wine. Our reservation wait list was over 1,500 people long. David Nguyen's firm had invested, and we were planning a second location. Portland had embraced us completely. My father called once a month, as agreed. The conversations were awkward at first, but slowly we found things to talk about beyond surface pleasantries. He asked about the restaurant, about consulting projects, about my life in Portland. He actually listened to the answers. My mother sent care packages, books she thought I'd like, articles about hospitality trends, small things that showed she was thinking about me. It felt strange, this new attention, but I was learning to accept it without needing it. Madison and I texted occasionally. She'd taken a leave of absence from Harvard Law and was working at a nonprofit in Boston, figuring out what she actually wanted. "Turns out I like advocacy work," she wrote, "just not the law firm kind. Maybe I'll go back and finish the degree, maybe not. For the first time, I'm okay not knowing. Deal." The article in the Chronicle had continued to resonate, generating speaking invitations and consulting inquiries from around the country. I'd been invited to give a keynote at Cornell's hospitality conference in the fall, which felt like coming full circle. But the best part wasn't the success metrics or the media attention or even the slowly healing relationship with my family. The best part was the Thursday morning when I walked into the riverside at dawn, before any staff arrived, and stood in the quiet dining room watching the sunrise over the Willamette River. I'd built this, not for my parents' approval or to prove Madison wrong or to show the world I was worthy. I'd built it because hospitality mattered to me, because creating spaces where people felt cared for was meaningful work, because this was what I was meant to do. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Investor meeting at 10. New expansion proposal. This is getting exciting." Another text came through, this one from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Sophie. This is Rachel from SF Chronicle. Your story inspired my daughter to pursue culinary arts despite family pressure for pre-med. She wanted me to thank you. We both do." I looked around the riverside, my restaurant, my achievement, my proof that success doesn't need anyone else's permission to be real. My father had given Madison $500,000 because he believed she was worth investing in. But what I'd built with zero parental support was worth more than any dollar amount. Not because it was more successful or more impressive, but because every brick, every recipe, every staff training session, every satisfied guest was evidence that I'd believed in myself when no one else did. That's the real inheritance, not money or approval, but the unshakable knowledge that you are enough, exactly as you are, pursuing exactly what matters to you. I turned on the lights, fired up the coffee maker, and started preparing for another day of doing exactly what I was meant to do. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most, I hope it reminds you that your worth isn't determined by anyone else's recognition. Build your dreams anyway. Pursue your passion anyway. Be extraordinary anyway. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like and subscribe for more stories about healing, growth, and finding your own definition of success. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing that different paths can lead to equally valuable destinations.